I'm Andrew Nesky, and this is Science in the Outer Streams. For some, God's existence is a matter of fact. For others, the belief in the divine is a fact of faith. Yet, for others, God is little more than an unnecessary superstition that impedes human growth and progress. A leading champion for the philosophy of reason over theology is the Council for Secular Humanism, a group that has dedicated itself to deploring efforts to degenerate human intelligence that seek to explain the world in supernatural terms and who look outside nature for salvation. Our guest, Dr. David Noel, has been actively involved in the secular humanist movement since 1988. He is currently a regional director for the Council for Secular Humanism and is a member of their Speakers Bureau. His PhD in cognitive and computer science well suits someone whose life's philosophy is based on the presumption that the human position is scientifically quantifiable. He is currently a postdoctoral associate at the Center for the Neural Basis of Cognition, where he develops computational models of the mechanisms involved in learning. Dr. Noel, thank you so much for coming.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
There's so many things that I'd like to investigate with you today, but for the people who are tuning in and maybe have not heard of secular humanism, is there a way to sum it up?
I can try. First of all, I'd be surprised if any of your viewers hadn't heard of secular humanism, especially if they were around in the 80s. Secular humanism became the term for the boogeyman of the religious right by people like Jerry Falwell. And indeed, it was in that time, in the 80s, that the term secular humanism was adopted by a group of like-minded individuals, mostly centered around the American Humanist Association in Amherst, New York, to signify what it was that they felt was their own personal life stance. Secular humanism puts the human in the center of both epistemology and ethics. It says that what we know about the world is not a matter of divine revelation, but a matter of a imperfect human process of scientific investigation of the world around us. It says, with regard to ethics, that human well-being is of paramount interest, and that which is good is that which promotes the well-being of persons.
I see. How did you come to this? Were you raised in a religious household?
So I was raised in a liberal Christian denomination by a pair of parents who I adore tremendously, but who had interesting backgrounds. My mother was very conservative in her Christian beliefs, but my father refused to discuss such matters with his children, myself and my two brothers, thinking that it was something that we should sort out for ourselves. Still, he was convinced through his own education that the only source of ethical education for children was the traditional church. And so he had us go through the normal process of Christian education in a Lutheran church. This process of trying to work things out for ourselves, however, seemed to backfire. As I progressed through the educational process in this Lutheran church, I found myself asking the leaders of the church more and more questions. This they found to be wonderful. Very few of the children involved in the program seemed to be so engaged, so willing to ask these questions, so willing to attend to their answers. Indeed, when I was younger, my parents were convinced that I was headed for the priesthood. Mm-hmm. What the leaders didn't understand is that the answers that they were giving were not very satisfactory. They were answers of the form, you have to trust us. You have to take this on faith. Come to this as a little child. And as a young man interested in piecing things together, these were not satisfactory answers. And by the time I was through with high school, I was pretty convinced that at least the answers that I was getting from that denomination didn't hold water, didn't have anything to substantiate them. And I went looking elsewhere.
I can understand. I think that there's my own experience actually has a lot to do with clergy is not very good at the intellectual discussion of their own faith. It seems that they're often more emotionally based, and for somebody who's very oriented in terms of thought and consciousness, it can be a very frustrating thing to try to get answers in circumstances. I think all too often when somebody gets asked a question that they hadn't given a lot of thought to themselves, that the first gut is to say, "Take it on faith, my son," but oftentimes, that unfortunate overuse of that answer is compensated by larger and greater minds that have perhaps investigated the question. But I understand what you mean about how it tends to turn off someone who has a particularly intellectual direction that they're going in their life.